Welcome, everyone. I'm Girija Krishnamurthy, Deloitte's Global Technology Sector Leader. A warm welcome to all of you, and thanks for joining today's conversation. It's about powering the AI era, delivering data centers with confidence. So data centers, as all of you know, has become such a critical topic for all of us. That's the one thing that you hear about everywhere, powering the AI era. But success depends so much on the execution of it. It's a myriad of factors. It's energy, it's power, it's capital, it's permitting, it's supply chain, coordination across a very complex ecosystem, so on and so forth. So today we'll take a look at how we deliver data centers with confidence, from infrastructure fundamentals to evolving business models. We'll take a look at how the vendor ecosystem has evolved and what support is needed to make it successful. So I'm joined by a team of esteemed panelists here, and I'll have them introduce themselves in just a second. So with no further ado, and it's a multi-pronged introduction that I will request you to do. So if each of you could please introduce yourself, tell us what first comes to mind when someone says data center boom, and what it means for you in your role. So we'll start with you then as our esteemed guest from Intel to begin with.
Thank you. My name is Udayan Mukherjee. I'm an Intel Senior Fellow. I drive all the silicon systems and software for networking and edge platforms. Data center boom, I work with like AT&T is there. I work with all the operators, and they are all looking for like large language model, domain specific on the telcos, and everything has been fine tuned or trained in the hyperscalers cloud. So data center boom in one word is all about AI training at this point. Inferencing is a mixed picture where we go ultimately, it may be in the edge, and we can talk more, but it's all about training and fine tuning of AI.
Well said, Udayan. Training and that's it's a really great point. And as we evolve to the edge,
Right.
we'll get into that conversation as well. Michael Flynn, over to you. Please introduce.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Flynn. I'm the global infrastructure leader for Deloitte. That means the physical infrastructure, the anything that's built that's hard and you can touch. Um, for me, the AI boom is creating this need to build so many data centers. We have a talk about walls in, walls out. So for me and my team, we're focused on the walls out. So not that silica stuff which the guys will talk about, but how do you figure out the amount of power, the amount of water, the telecoms? How is that all connected? How do you make it more resilient? How do you make sure that it's there because this is now critical infrastructure? And the other thing that's driving it is that it has to be everywhere now because, Sovereign is saying, I need to be able to control where the data is, and therefore I need to build it in every location. It's critical to the way my country works, and therefore I need to consider that. And then it's just the amount of scale that has to happen, and trying to think through everything from real estate through to building and the challenges, and we'll come back to all of those in terms of it is difficult. Not everybody that is doing data centers is used to building physical infrastructure and all of the ecosystem that surrounds that.
Thank you, Michael. Very interesting, the physical infrastructure angle of the data centers, and thank you for bringing that up. Over to you, Jazz. Please introduce yourself.
Indeed,
Give
thank you.
us your
So,
perspective.
Jazz George, I'm the Deloitte Global AI Market Scaling Leader. Nice to be here with you all. So, when I think of the boom of data centers, I think of a generational opportunity, but I also think of systemic risks that come with it. And specifically, when you're looking at the grid constraints, you're looking at the power capacity constraints, all that are important, I'll say, ingredients that are needed to build out these data centers at scale, it becomes a very important factor to think about how this is going to happen. Data centers are truly the resilience engines of the world now when you're looking at some of the shifts that are taking place. In the previous century, it was all about securing supply chains when it comes to oil and gas for nations to be resilient. And now in this era, in this century, it's about having access to intelligence. And intelligence in today's era is being created in these data centers, which becomes even more important to make sure that all the necessary pieces are in place to be able to build with confidence while managing the risks that are out there.
Really well said, bringing that intelligence perspective into the picture, Jazz. Thank you. So now moving on, Michael, let's start with the infrastructure realities since you talked about it, and let's talk a little bit about what's different this time around. So, what do you think is structurally different about today's data center boom, sorry, and how can we speak to the scale of development, the ecosystems, and the biggest driver of delivery confidence? What's different this time around? How would you position it?
So I think there's a whole variety of things. I think firstly, we are using more and more AI in everything we do. And if anybody's been to Harmonicity, here you'll see how a city is driven and the tech is now connected into an entire city. And as you think about individual assets, you can't just think about one, you got to think about the ecosystem. And they all have to be connected. Now, AI is driving some of that connectivity piece. But what it's also doing is driving the demand for more data centers because of that scale. So this is quite circular. Um, as you go through that, the other bit is we are using AI to make that delivery confidence far stronger. Because I talked about earlier in terms of what when you're delivering physical assets, apart from that connectivity, have you got enough power? Have you got enough water? Have you got access to all of enough connectivity? Irrespective of what's going into it, and you guys can talk about the availability of GPUs and everything. But it's how do you access that and make sure that it's delivered on time and delivered on budget, and that is not as easy as you might think, given that 80% of capital projects go over budget. We know that 10-15% of the value goes missing off the back of a truck or off the just fraud, waste, and abuse. It's not necessarily bad; it just happens. And so you've got all of these lost things that happen. Now, what we've done is we've put AI into how do I connect the various elements. So how do I look at finance, procurement, the technical builds of these, figuring out, and how do I use AI to become, not only that I'm trying to check whether it is fraud, waste, and abuse, but how do I jump ahead and say, well, actually, do you know what? Every time you order from them, they're always late, or they're they're always going.
Predicting that.
So we're going to be predicting. So don't order from them. Go find a proper supplier that's going to do these things. And so now you get a better challenge of it. Now that connects, and it also helps sort out data. There's lots and lots of data as you build anything, any physical asset. The problem is everybody holds it in because if I own the data, I have control. So as and so if you're building a data center, you've got to say, well, if I'm going to pay for it, I need access to your data, because that allows me to manage this better. And then you can use AI to, again, become far more predictive in terms of PMO, the program management. Not the technical build, but managing all the parties, because there's everything from permitting through to getting all the parties involved, getting delivery, supply chain, sustainability. All of those can be connected. But we're using AI to do that, which again drives more need for data centers. So this is quite circular, but the demand is so huge, and I don't think it's going to stop, no matter how much we improve in terms of efficiency. And so your other figuring out in terms of, apart from that permitting piece, is the amount of land that's going to be covered in time by data centers, and what that does to cities and what that does to economies. All has to be figured out, because we haven't quite got there yet. But it's here to stay. It's embedded in terms of what our expectations are as to how everything works. And as I said, we are also using it to try and help solve the problems that are now being created.
Really well said, Michael. And you touched upon demand and how intense that is. So, Udan, let's shift to demand and how it's shaping the market. And you also touched upon edge in your opening comments. So how is demand splitting across the hyperscale, enterprise, the distributed edge, and what does that shift require from the ecosystem?
Yeah, if you just step back and see how this thing has evolved, last 3 years is all about Gen AI. So bigger and bigger models, you're training it with huge amount of data. So your multiple different models are there, and they're getting better and better, bigger data centers. But what is happening now every domain, you touch on some of this, like telco is a domain. We are in MWC. telcos are the domain, finance. So they want to have a domain-specific LLM, which doesn't have to have all the data, but fine-tune the set of data. It doesn't have to be that big a model, a smaller model. And then you have those things running in their own telco's data center or telco edge. Remember, edge is where the data are being generated. All the camera data are connected somewhere which is generated from the edge. You can bring it to the data center or you can actually do certain processing there with a small model. So what is happening that as you go more and more into this specific domain specific elements of it, there is a data sovereignty, data ownership becomes an issue. I have an operator which I'll not name told me once that he doesn't even want, he wants a rack pipeline and a LLM in his infrastructure. He doesn't even want to have his prompt going out to the hyperscalers. So he's training it in a general way, but then bring everything down to his own telco data centers, his edge. It's a distributed edge. So a lot of those elements are the second order and third order of development going on. As this Gen AI LLMs get to more enterprise, more domains like this, you will see more of those aspects of it.
Very interesting perspective, especially on the edge, and I completely agree with you. So moving on to the telcos, Jazz, building on everything that Udayan just mentioned, how are telcos transforming, and what business models do you see emerging with telcos, and what are some signs that you think a strategy will succeed from a telco perspective?
Indeed. So what we're seeing with the telcos is it's less about their focus on owning everything like they traditionally have in the past, but more around to what Udayan was saying, orchestrating the pieces that are needed to be able to deliver outcomes for their customers. And this includes a combination of the right amount of compute, connectivity, and then also the amount of power that's actually going to be used to be able to deliver them. Now, telcos also find themselves in a unique position to be able to understand the AI workloads in terms of the compute density they need, in terms of the latency sensitivity, in terms of the privacy implications, to be factoring that in to know where should these workloads actually even be deployed. Should it be at the edge? Should it be at push to the hyperscalers, if you will? So with that broad framing, when you're looking at the types of solutions that the telcos are starting to build by going up the value chain to be able to capture that 35 to 40% CAGR in AI versus the single low digits that traditional telco businesses are facing, there are two patterns emerging. One is horizontal solutions, which basically are tapping into the needs of sovereignty, security, privacy that many nations are prioritizing right now. Models as a service, GPU as a service, if you will. And then there's a second bucket, which is around verticalization, where telcos are going after certain vertical domains, vertical sectors, be it in healthcare or be it in finance, be it in education, to build AI stacks that are delivering solutions in an efficient and optimal way for those constituents. So that's where the trade-offs are happening, and every telco has to think about where do they have an advantage, a durable advantage, to be able to actually invest in those areas, but then also think about the adjacent businesses that they are in that will benefit from large investments that are going into certain vertical stacks. And that's also a pattern that we're seeing with the telcos that are being successful. They're looking at it from a portfolio perspective and leveraging their investments and adjacencies to be able to deliver outcomes.
Fascinating to hear your perspective on how telcos have evolved and shifted to again, make the most out of the data center move. Now, shifting our lens a little bit, and I'll get to all of you for your perspectives. But going into the public-private ecosystem partnerships, and they're driving industry standards. So how can that sort of partnership evolve to drive standards? And what vendor alignment is needed to build a scalable environment? So I'll start with you, and then get to Michael, and then
Yeah, if you look at it traditionally, what the telcos or operators do, they actually process connectivity, essentially calls. So your base stations, your packet core, and then obviously going to the internet. These used to be traditionally appliances. It's a single appliance, vertically integrated, based on custom silicon. But this has become very expensive over the years. You cannot maintain it. So originally it became a cloud native kind of a model. Okay, hyperscalers have been using cloud technology for a long time. Why can't I use it? That was the operator's mindset. So we started looking into open systems, CAS, and then managing it that the way the cloud guys have been doing for a long time. Now it's an open platform, means that, okay, the standard silicon, I don't want to actually invest more and more into this custom silicons. There investment happening in custom silicon more on the AI side of it, but the traditional bread and butter, base stations, packet core, why does it have to be custom silicon? It's a standard silicon. Now, then again, now they're moved into it like, yeah, that's connectivity. What can I do in addition to that?
Yeah.
So they're talking about services. I mean, you have NVIDIA talking about AI plus RAN, AI on RAN. Even 5 years back, you can't even imagine telling an operator or a telco that you're going to run a service on a DU or a base station.
Right.
That's sacrosanct. You will not touch it. But now they're thinking, can I do some services, some lawful intercept, some other stuff, not just regulatory, but can I free up some cores, the silicon, in the night time when it's not being used and run some distributed training? Even that thought process is getting there.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Then let me go to you, Jazz, and then come to Michael.
Certainly. When it comes to standards, I think they play a very important role in how AI is going to scale across industries. Standards bring this beautiful, neutral, trusted layer where everyone can basically benefit from. And when you look at the incentives that the different stakeholders have, governments are looking for resilience and sovereignty. When you look at the operators, they're looking for capital efficiency, they're looking for scale. When you look at the vendors, they're looking for demand. Standards have this ability to enable all of that, right? Now, public-private partnerships are crucial to accelerate the build-out of these standards.
That's really well said. So, Michael, I'll look for a quick 30-second of your perspective, and evidently we've run out of time. We're having so much fun, and then we'll wrap things up here.
Well, I'll give you that quick view.
Yeah.
Look, it takes the village, right? So it takes everybody. It takes public and private to fit this in. Each has a role. Each has an element to contribute in order to deliver what all of we just talked about in terms of that AI that's here to stay and the data centers that are needed in order to sustain that. It has to be about resilience. It has to be about sovereignty. All of those things need to be managed. But if you don't have the private sector, we're better at delivering it. The private sector who will provide the capital, and ultimately the consumer who will help pay for it. It doesn't work. So it takes the village.
Really well said. And on that note, I certainly had a lot of fun moderating this session. So many great nuggets of information. Thank you, panelists, for a wonderful session. Thank you all for joining. And with that, have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.